Welcome to PharmaSource, recorded at CDMO Live 2025. This episode is brought to you by Qualifies, the platform that helps life science teams streamline audits and predict site risks with AI-driven insights.
We're going to be talking about biologics external manufacturing. We've got Olaf Birkenmeier, who's head of external manufacturing for Polpharma Biologics, specializes in biosimilar development and drug substance capabilities. Julien, Laizé, director of external manufacturing at Valneva, which covers preclinical all the way through to commercialization. Seigneur, senior director of external manufacturing for UCB, and her area is sterile manufacturing. And Giorgio Salciarini from BSP Pharmaceuticals. Let's get into it. To begin with, I'd like to ask each of you to give a short introduction to yourself and your role, please, and then to share your perspective on what you think the most significant challenges right now for external manufacturing in biologics.
So hello everyone, my name is Olaf Birkenmeier. I'm head of external manufacturing at Polpharma Biologics. I'm 3.5 years in this position. Before I was at Sandoz Novartis for the external supply organization. And in a nutshell, I think for especially biosimilar developments, the challenge is really that you have a lot of conflicting priorities you need to take into consideration. So you want to have if you outsource, you want to be very flexible in the beginning. You need to really have a good one in terms of quality and that they really get things right in order to meet the target date. But on the same time, you need to have someone who is, in the end, let's say, rather cheap, because there will be maybe significant or brutal price erosion in the end, and it's difficult to find someone who ticks off all the boxes, has all the flexibility, and is at the same time good. And also one thing is, let's say, especially if you go to, let's say, a little bit more cost-competitive ones, they often have experience with smaller molecules, and they might not have that much experience in the biologics area. So it's really, you need to look into the details, and capacity reservation is also a big thing, because depending on your market entry, depending on the competition, and depending what the originator throws into your face to defend this, your volumes might be completely off from whatever you expect in the beginning.
So hello everyone, so my name is Seigneur. I'm working for UCB in external manufacturing, so focused on sterile, we spoke about it. I've been 17 years at UCB, time flies. Prior to that at Novartis and in strategic consulting. Had different roles within UCB, more recently in external manufacturing, but also BD, risk management and strategic planning for quite a while. For those that don't know UCB, it's actually a mid-sized company. We are facing huge growth for the time being. So we kind of tripled our market cap in 10 years, doubled our sales in the same period, and expect to do the same in the next 3 years. So it turns back to my next question. My main challenge today is clearly capacity. How do I cope with growth? How do I cope with the fact that we do even better than we thought in a very constrained market? That's one part for the here and now, for the products that are on market. And how do I cope with actually the uncertainty of what is coming next in terms of type of pipeline? The size of that, what our company will be completely different, a different game. Not having necessarily sufficient visibility on everything that is coming. But still, I need to plan, because we are in this constrained market, making commitments and not spreading my bets too much in making those commitments.
Giorgio Salciarini, Head of Sales, Technical Business Development in BSP. In this role since 10 years previously, I joined the company as a Head of Manufacturing, so background is mainly technical. In the pharma field since almost 25 years, previous experience in Bristol Myers Squibb, always in manufacturing. Now supporting and continuing experience in BSP. For those who are not familiar with our company, we are an Italian CDMO, based close to Italy, fully focused on manufacturing for innovative compounds in the space of oncology, immunotherapies, with a specific focus. ADCs is part of one of our portfolio product, but significantly also growing in supporting new biological entities that is becoming of course, a very dynamic space and interesting, by also continuing supporting our focus on more classic chemotherapy as small molecules. So with this environment, we are in the space since almost 15 years, so challenges for continuing supporting our partners, it's always evolving. Now, of course, as we heard also in this speech and these last 2 days, everybody is focused on managing possible uncertainty due to geopolitical and tariffs. On our side, we are continuing struggling and trying to provide best level services as we can by focusing on what is clear and it's always the same. So I guess everybody of us shares that some points are out of our control. Of course, in this moment, there is a lot of discussion and we don't know how to move, but what is the base of keeping partnership is being reliable in what we do. You mentioned quality level. It is absolutely something no companies may find any compromise to go ahead. Variability may be business model or the way on also our partner may address cost associated discussion. So I think at this moment, this is one of the most hot topics, but as also we heard from Gilles, there is no clear answer at the moment. So what we can do now is preparing scenarios by confirming that our strength and the strength on the services from CDMOs may be pointing and stressing attention on quality, reliability on the supply, technology, expertise that CDMOs can bring on the field.
Thank you. Julien.
Hello everybody, good morning. So I am Julien Laizé, the Director of External Manufacturing CTM at Valneva. So in terms of background, I'm doctor in pharmacy and MBAs, and I have both technical and business view. And currently I'm taking care of all the external manufacturing projects that we have between the preclinical scale till early commercialization. So in terms of challenges, I will come back to what Olaf, you said. Flexibility is one of the major challenges, but for different things and maybe different meaning. There are the flexibility for the manufacturing slot, you mentioned that, but I want to say there is as well the flexibility because we are living in a climate of uncertainty with the geopolitical aspect, with the business aspect, etc. And the flexibility is one of the major challenges that we ask to our CDMO. That's why sometimes when the CDMO is too, I want to say, not enough flexible, it can create major hurdles for the negotiation and the project that we launch with them. Another challenge that I want to mention is definitely the lack of capacities and the lack of technical expertise in some specific area. I'm talking for myself where my company is for vaccines, but in some technical capabilities, only a couple of CDMOs can provide the relevant service. And it's one of the major problems that we see at the moment. And you combine that with the lack of adaptability sometimes, the lack of capacities, the lack of technical expertise, it creates major hurdle at the moment.
Thank you. And Julien, if I could just stay with you, please. When we started talking about you speaking at the conference, you said that your global business at Valneva was already taking action on biosecure. What's the latest, please, with how those, not biosecure itself, but those types of policies are affecting your external manufacturing, particularly around Chinese entities? What adaptations are you making to your network?
So the answer is yes, we are impacted, and I'm talking again by myself, where our major partner is the US and US Army. So we are definitely impacted by that. We have two kinds of things where it is impacted. The first of all, it's for the new project. When we want to develop a new drug, when we want to start a tech transfer, at that moment when we have a list of CDMOs, when we see a CDMOs is Chinese or partially owned by the Chinese entity, very likely we'll discard it. Even if the Biosecure Act is an act at the moment, we need to understand the mindset of this act will become a law soon. And US, they are afraid about two things. The first one, it's IP. It's a steal of intellectual property that can be gotten by China. So Jill mentioned that the inspector kidnapped in China, but it's the same for IP because the main reputation of Chinese is that they are not respectful with IP. The second thing, it's in terms of pure capacity. So if one day I produce for US in China, for US territory, and one day, for any reason, China decide to invade Taiwan and China block the vaccines that need to be sold in US, that's a major problem for US security. So it's these two kind of things. So first of all, for the new project, I don't want to say it's an immediate blacklist, but we don't want to make USA not happy with that. And in a second way, for the existing partnership that we could have with CDMO, with CRO, and with even excipient supplier, it will be a long-term project where we'll repatriate during the next 3 to 5 years our capacities.
We're moving, I think, to a time of regionalized supply hubs. Catherine, I'm interested to know how you're approaching that at UCB.
So we all spoke about tariffs quite a lot for the time being, but considering that the regionalization is started with tariffs is for me wrong. It's a trend that has been there already for a long, long time. It's something we speak about for several years. The China moves you're making, it's something that we also somehow consider in the same time of logic. Maybe we're not as extreme as you are, but still it's an important topic. And we asked ourselves the question, up to the point that can we get inspected in China? And will it help in staying on market from that point of view? So really, regionalization is something we are kind of considering on the long term. And to me, a lot of the moves we saw on the slide before about the investments, you cannot announce an investment of that size if you didn't prepare it for quite a long time. So that's actually, they were in the books. It's just that they come out now, but they were in the books. It is something that is coming, and we will all face it. We are a European company. Of course, by design, it makes the consequence that a lot of our footprint is European-based. So indeed, it's a challenge, and it's something that we are addressing for the time being. And it's something we have in the discussions with our different CDMOs to say, how can you support us with our within existing network in kind of doing the transition? And if we cannot make it in full, how do we kind of cope for it? But for us, it's more not having, it's really kind of real regionalization. So US for US, China for China, and maintaining hubs from that point of view. That's something that is really at the core of how we are wanting to look at things.
Thank you. And the same question to you, Olaf.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, although in our mind, one thing obviously, which is, I mean, if you have a huge molecule like GLP-1 and you have millions of those, it's nice to have different sites all over the world for business continuity reasons. But if you go to some biologics and let's say orphan drugs or whatever, and then you look into the forecast of several presentations, you might have, let's say, some presentation of a vial where you have 5,000 units per year. And then if you think, okay, how do we split that into different manufacturing sites and keeping the shelf life and producing, let's say, a couple batches, then you say, okay, well, it's not really going to work for some of these things, or the prices will increase, let's say, to some unacceptable level. And another thing from the past, there was some discussion regarding regionalization, that some countries not only say, we would like you to produce as much as you can in our country, but also they say, you need to meet a certain price, and we take this price based on some European country. And if you say, well, just making it up, if you produce just for Liechtenstein, you will obviously not get the same price as if you were producing for whole Europe or for the whole world. And this definitely is something, it's difficult to find a good solution here, but yeah, you need to work it. So it might be that you divide, let's say, all over the world and US also, but getting smaller might for some molecules not be possible.
Yeah, and maybe building on that, one of the ways we are trying to solve it, because it's a challenge we face as well, not to the same scale, but same kind of logic, is to minimize the number of CDMOs we work with. So we work more with partners by trying to kind of consolidate volumes from a platform point of view, not necessarily from a product point of view. So that's really one way somehow to kind of manage it. It's not the panacea, but it's one of the approaches we consider.
Thank you. Giorgio, from the CDMO perspective, how is BSP adapting to increasing needs for regional manufacturing, and particularly when there's limited fill-finish capacity in the US?
Yeah, I guess regional manufacturing now is hot topics due to tariff that everybody is trying to understand. But if we think about not this specific question at the moment, but look time-wise to the demand of capacity, this is an issue that is impacting the space since a long time. I remember when we were entering into the space, beginning of 2000, the pharma industry was lacking with a big issue with disruption of the supply for oncology product due to big regulatory inspection that was impacting several CDMOs in the space. COVID, with a completely different background and environment, was absolutely struggling the pharma industry to face with something that was unexpected. And directly for the demand of the vaccine, indirectly for all the other capacity that was missing into the market for covering other compound. We were working in cytotoxics. So cytotoxics was one of the pharmaceutical and therapeutic area that was still under highlights because the government, any countries, FDA first was not permitting to impact the supply chain of oncology drugs due to reason that everybody can explain. But if you look to this, let's say, lesson learned that we had is first, CDMO is somehow more used than pharma industry to react quickly to this unplanned situation that may happen. On the other side, as Catherine was mentioning, lesson learned was that we were now moving or suggest to moving to more strategic partnership than tactical one. So instead of targeting one project at a time with a variety of suppliers, they may increase the diversity in terms of quality system, different user requirements according to therapeutical area or according also to the cost of good. What we have seen, big pharma, if you have the possibility, they have maybe somehow internalized and also rationalized their relationship with CDMOs, reduce the number of partners, prioritizing quality, time to market, time to delivery, something that again is not something that you can negotiate together with costing, and trying to work in a more strategic way. This it also give you the possibility to have more flexibility on the capacity that you may negotiate with a partner. From our side, the capacity that we may offer to a partner without limiting also the impact of cost management if you need to change plans due to unplanned issue they may happen. So what we see now, I guess, on one side, pharma is more educated to work on what they have learned, so reduce number of partners, prioritizing with their internal goals, pipeline-wise, and on the other side, also relying on the experience and the expertise of CDMO for being more flexible or quickly reacting to changing around the world. So,
great, makes sense.
Maybe I can also add to that. I mean, I think the trend is really to pick a few good CMOs and having more strategic partnership and assigning ideally more than one molecule there. That if you say, hey, we have more forecast for one molecule, a little bit less for another one, yet you can say, hey, can we trade one slot for molecule A versus B? Or that especially when you have, let's say, programs running that you say, hey, maybe we can skip one commercial batch and do it a little bit later, but we get, let's say, additional tech batch schedule. And therefore, it's really good to have, let's say, some ongoing collaboration with good CMOs that they understand your issue. You have a little bit that you have flexibility, you have some capacity reserved. So it's definitely mandatory that you have good relation and a few good CMOs to work with.
Yeah, and building on that, to me, it's as well important for development as for commercial to have those partnerships really established, because when the partnership is established, when we know the quality will be there, that's an important element also to play into accelerating pipeline as well. Because for pipeline projects, when we want to kind of go really fast and cut times for things that are kind of not on the way, having an established relationship with the CMO where we know we can go, they know our ways of working, they know our processes, we have made a decision to progress with the molecule, okay, we can move immediately. And that partnership is so key in not losing months, in finding out how we want to proceed, how we want to kind of put in place all the relationship management, all these steps. Yeah, it's a big difference.
I may also add that also to facilitate this flexibility, we decided to have flexibility through facility design. So possibility to change from one line to another, scaling up if any speed up on the regulatory approval may come. Luckily, let's say breakthrough designation or speed up revision of the files can occur. This can be supported if capabilities are easily scalable or the CDMO have a proper plan for switching option A to option B quickly without impacting also the quality attributes of the product or whatever is being within the registration file.
Thank you. Julien, what's your experience been at Valneva of capacity challenges at the moment? And are there any tactical approaches you're taking to secure necessary capacity?
So I will come back a little bit to what you said. It's first of all, we try to centralize much more our CDMO because you talk about the lack of flexibility at the beginning, but one solution to securize the slots, to securize our partnership is definitely to have maybe less fragmented production, but more partner. And due to the fact that our weight with the CDMO is bigger, our power struggle, our negotiation is, I would say, easier. Due to that, we can get slots much easier in that way. So definitely, in terms of challenge, it's how we solve the situation. And in terms of contractual approach, it is to negotiate a contract that allows us a flexibility, that allows, I want to say, a path where we can move, I want to say, we can place slots in an easier way than, I want to say, how it is made by a typical CDMO with a product schedule, etc. So it's one of the way how we securize that. And I will maybe say much more psychologic things. It's definitely the relationship. 50% of your success rate with a CDMO is depending on the relationship. So you can have an excellent contract with a CDMO, an excellent CDMO. If the relationship is not there, it will be one of the major problems. And you assess that not only, I want to say, in how you talk, but during the site visit, you can really see how it works at the CDMO site. You can perceive, you can feel the ambience, how they are, and it's one of the major things with the CDMO. Yeah.
Olaf, biosimilar development has particular forecasting challenges, having to move quickly in an agile way. How do you build that into your manufacturing network?
So it's always difficult. So ideally you have depends whether you sell the products yourself or you have a partner. Ideally, you have a partner and say, this is a forecast, we just route it to the CMO, and then basically if there's some cancellation fee, you route this on. But this is obviously not always the case. So you need to think a little bit about strategically, saying, hey, you have a contract where you say, hey, we get capacity, but there is not too much commitments, or ideally you have several products where you can say, hey, I need less capacity for molecule A, but we can use it for molecule B, or you get, let's say, the next development program will go to you. So you have, it's not a clear, simple solution what you have to do. You have to work with the CMO, manage expectations, communicate very early. I mean, you will have this typical long-term model, you will have binding forecast, the rolling one, but still, I mean, there's always like, if you have a good relationship to the CMO and then we come to then there's always, let's say, room to talk to, hey, the forecast might be lower or the ramp up might be faster. And then if you have a good relationship, they try to work with you, and then that everyone is happy in the end. So it's good contracts, obviously, hedging it a little bit regarding, let's say, that you are not locked into too much capacity, penalties if you don't use it, and trying to have a very good and open relationship and communication with the CMO, I would say.
Yeah, I can't agree more. We are even doing workshops with our CMOs to see how we can unlock capacity in different ways, interchanging products, but it's thinking about their different lines, about, okay, if they add one shift on another line, can we gain capacity on our line? And that's typically a discussion we make together to kind of see how we can do more with less, or more with the same number of slots, can we do even better? And also, okay, what are ways to find slots that are not impacting the other clients and that are really making the success of the companies? But that works, Julien, I can't agree more. If the relationship is so strong that we can really make it together and it's a success of both companies. And that's an investment both sides in making it work.
Giorgio, you spoke about moving from product-based to strategic partnerships with longer forecasts. If we could get into that a bit more, into the detail of it, what does that look like in terms of future MSAs? How do you structure contracts around risk sharing and flexibility?
I guess all of us were stressing much the attention on strategic and partnership.
Yeah.
That we were repeating, because managing our relationship between the two must be, of course, something that has been shared and much more of being the same focus on delivery the product. So this means that even targeting or addressing MSA, you're thinking to this must not be only one side imposing or pushing for a point of view respect to the both. And so negotiating MSA, of course, anybody hopes never to go in the end. But if you base the relationship through a real partnership, also negotiation may be easier. So, and practically, what we may also do to make the life easier is managing clinical programs through a smoother and more flexible agreement, highlighting much more on the flexibility on schedule, more than what is the fee per program. So maybe fixed point that can be struggle, while looking to commercial is a different view, because you may have more stable visibility on a forecast. Commercial MSA may be more based on a long-term supply. At the point, the situation may be also from a regulatory point of view very well established, so it's much more focused on keeping the reliability on the quality system, reliability on timing, more than the technical issue. So also from a MSA point of view, flexibility may be designing a specific focus with two main content. They may be again looking to the objective, that is the product itself, and being more in timeline for the clinical, where timeline may be more tight, while consolidating mid and long-term supply for the commercials.
Yeah, great. And I'd like to ask the rest of the panelists, well, maybe you first, Julien, about your response to that, and from your side of the table. What are those partnership models which you find are working and incentivizes both sides? What would you write into the contract?
It's a question. Yeah. I want to say, in terms of contractual model, definitely we have the same structure than everybody, MSA, CMSA. But in terms of contractual model, we try to negotiate in a way where the CDMO, I want to say, could be flexible and open. Not, I want to say, we are giving the direction, because one of the major problems with the lack of flexibility that sometimes some CDMO came and we felt that the CDMO gave the direction to us. And I want to say, however, as a product owner, we need to give the direction even for everything. And one of the major challenges in the contractual approach, because we talk about the strategic partnership, stronger is the relationship with that. But one of the major challenges is as well that sometimes the CDMO can have a bigger power struggle on us, and we can have a lack of opportunities or a lack of options if we want to change by due to a project or something else. And one of the major challenges in the contractual model that we have, it's the IP at the moment, intellectual property. And in terms of contractual model, contractual approach, we are very focused on to protect our IP, but now it's a trend that we have seen with all the CDMO that we negotiate a contract. In terms of IP, they are much more willing to have a right on, if we perform with you a one-stop approach in a strategic relationship, to have a right on the drug that we are developing with you. So I would say in terms of contractual model, what we have, it is clearly to give the responsibility to the CDMO for the manufacturing. It is your process, it is your expertise, but we are the owner of the product. It's definitely what we stand and what we are looking for.
Great, thank you. Catherine, would you like to add anything?
Maybe one thing, we go for long-term contracts. That's maybe an important point, because it's painful enough to negotiate, frankly. It's something that is to be designed, but also giving the tone about how we want to kind of go for the relationship, go for these longer term contracts. So that's maybe one important element. And when we can, we already foresee in the contract all these flexibility elements that we spoke about, interchangeability about projects. Even we put sometimes conversion rates about product A means so much for product B in terms of number of slots that we can kind of get. When these are commercial projects, it's easy. For earlier, it's a bit of a different story. But we do these kind of things. We also foresee ability to go up, ability to go down. We share long-term forecasts, not this binding, but we share really long-term forecasts. We engage in discussions where, for the really strategic partners, where we kind of share, okay, what are the type of technologies we are trying to evolve? How can we put in place technology platforms on our side by making our products more standard to create and facilitate the interchangeability we spoke about. So these are the type of elements we kind of put in the contract as well that really help us kind of build this, we believe, win-win that is so important.
Yeah, I mean, let's say in biotech, you have a handful of molecules, so there's more focus on each one, obviously, rather than... So what we try to avoid is having high cancellation fees during the program batches, that you say, well, it's fair enough, you've canceled batch one day before. I mean, the CMO cannot do anything else, and you should pay, no doubt. But let's say if they have cancellation fee where they say, hey, half a year earlier when they can easily reschedule things, they say, why should we pay cancellation fee when you know that you are basically fully booked, so you can easily do this. So this is one thing in the beginning that you say, hey, let's not have undue cancellation policies and having some flexibility to move things around, or to be able to cancel some of program activities which you might or might not need, so putting things as optional in, let's say, in the initial contract. And another thing really is to also think long term regarding then as commercial setup, that sometimes you might say with development, hey, let's rush into things, let's do quick and dirty, and this is everything, and we worry about everything later. But if you don't at least think a little bit about this commercial contract, the supply, what you need, and this one, you might have a very hard discussion then further on to change this. So yeah, you need to have the flexibility in the beginning, and then let's say good and fair commercial terms that in the end both sides are happy, and that you're, let's say, gladly assign the next molecule to the same CMO, assuming technical fit.
Great, thank you. We're approaching the end, but I'd really like to ask each of you how you approach balancing investments needed. So how do you balance price pressure? How are you balancing resilience and dual sourcing? And how do you balance that also with the network that you're going to need in the next 5 years? I mean, it's quite a juggling act. Is there a particular a framework or approach that you're taking? And I'll go down the line in this order, please. So if we start with Julien.
Yes, it's a very good question, because now in a climate of uncertainty, the budget to be managed could be quite complex. However, for now, in a term of when we have a new project, and we ask for a specific batch size, a specific product, we are aware a little bit about the pricing that it will be. Even in terms of CDMO, we have no surprise very often in terms of pricing. What we have and how we work, it's very often we have a scorecard, and depending on the technology that we request, the batch size, the technology, the localization, we can estimate the future budget that will allocate to that project. And like that, we can estimate our budget. And in terms of contractual approach, for typical MSA, we have the investment fees. That can be 25%, 30%, sometimes 50%. And at the end of the project, we pay the remaining of the invoice. It's typically how it works. And due to that, we can estimate our budget and facilitate the investment, and no surprise in terms of company strategy on why we spend that at that moment. And for the CMSA, it's maybe at that moment maybe easier, because we have a product schedule that we plan for the next coming years, and the price is negotiated in the MSA with inflation. It's very important when we negotiate a price to negotiate in the CMSA with inflation, and to not have specific clause that the inflation can be raised till the CMO wants due to specific reason. It's very important if we want to maintain our budget to negotiate an inflation that is acceptable. However, in specific circumstances like the current geopolitical situation, we may accept that, but with justification. For example, currently, I don't want to say the rate, but we have a specific rate that can be higher. However, if it is higher than that, the CDMO needs to provide justification. And it's how, both on calculation, knowledge on the market, we can know a budget and how we'll invest in the next 2 to 3 years with our CDMO strategy.
Thank you. Giorgio, in 60 seconds, please.
Yeah, for us, let's say, from investing, we have balancing both sides. So, of course, trying to be flexible with different requirements from different partners. They may be linked to their financial goals or their strategy in pricing or technology. They may be customized or discussed case by case. On the other hand, we are working on internal costing, so trying to balance and have a very clear idea on which is the fixed cost that cannot be negotiable versus what can be somehow part of the discussion that can be entered into by project or according to the strategic negotiation that we may have. Of course, and it was strengthened. One thing is long-term evaluation. They may also offer the opportunity for the specific financial strategy that could identify different way of consolidating the partnership by offering specific discount in different forms, capacity, rebate, or whatever it is, depending on the programs. On the other hand, we are consolidating our capacity, investing internally on continuing expanding and consolidating, reinsuring our partner that there is capacity that will be continually injected for supporting long-term forecast.
Thank you. Catherine.
So back to your question, maybe you remember the slide day one about the priorities from an innovator point of view. We were very aligned with that. Cost, yes, but not at the expense of quality. That's maybe an important element. And really, it's a matter of where we are in the projects, how strategic is the product for UCB, whether we are early stage, whether we late stage, we may have a different balance. But overall, we are not a company that wants to win on cost of goods. We are not a generic company, but we want to make sure that we invest in sufficient resilience that we can afford to still be at a cost of goods price point that is making sense from a portfolio point of view. So that's an important element. So we differentiate from that point of view to invest in the resilience to the point to kind of not be out of market from a cost of goods point of view. We go for long-term partnerships. So of course, there are all the clauses that you spoke about, Julien, I completely agree. And we also, for me, to make sure that we are not getting out of markets, what is important is to still go for these regular touch points outside. So go for RFPs on a regular basis, request for quotations on a regular basis to see where is the market evolving, having the good discussions with our partners to say, look, we're still on market good, or we are getting out of market, how do we solve it together?
Great, thank you. And Olaf, last word to you.
Yeah, it's really depending on the strategy of the biosimilar what you develop, because there might be a big margin, there might be a small margin depending on competition and what the originator is doing. So it's a little bit case by case. I think the point what Julien was saying in the beginning, I think it's definitely is interesting to talk about indexation, that you say, okay, price increases are somehow, let's say, foreseeable, that you know, okay, well, if the inflation is like that, you will get these prices and you can take this into your business model. But regarding what you invest in terms of business continuity, this really depends on the molecule itself. For some molecules, it might not make sense that you say, hey, if this happens, then, okay, we are off the market. For some, it might really make sense to invest in, let's say, different sites, different tech transfers. But this might develop through the life cycle of the molecule.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to our panel. A round of applause, please.
For more external manufacturing insights, head to cdmolive.com and download our 50-page summary of the event. Make sure to book your ticket for CDMO Live 2026, taking place the 27th to 28th of May at the World Trade Center Rotterdam. We look forward to seeing you there.